Let's respond to some more comments. So, Get My Mail 2676 is responding to my first lien HELOC velocity banking answering objections video. Says, what's crazy is you're giving him a platform and willing to answer all his questions, though vague, publicly. Anyway, the appraiser is coming tomorrow for our line of credit. I cannot wait to set my family free. Thank you for this vid. Thanks for commenting, Get My Mail. I appreciate it. I'm glad to hear you are taking action and doing your first lien HELOC. So, congratulations on that. He's congratulating me for allowing this guy to comment because this series of answering objections was responding to a couple of people who commented pretty voluminously on the videos, which I appreciate. And their comments were at times very disrespectful, to say the least, but I allowed them to comment and responded. So, Get My Mail 2676 says, I was commending you for allowing him to comment. Truth wins. Yeah. Now, unfortunately, there were definitely other people whose comments had to be withheld because there was so much bad language in it and inciting violence. And it's really hard, I think, for people who are not in the business to appreciate the vitriol, the hatred that gets spewed in my direction. I really I try to psychoanalyze these people, but I really don't understand why. Just because you happen to disagree with me on a financial strategy, why that causes so much anger and hatred. But I think it speaks very well of the infinite banking concept, of velocity banking, of whole life insurance, of the first lien HELOC, that people get so angry and vitriolic about it. That speaks very well of those strategies. It doesn't speak so well of our critics. It's very rare for me to find. In fact, off the top of my head, I can't think of anyone. It's very rare for me to find someone who actually just engages in a calm discussion and says, hey, I disagree with you about the infinite banking concept, or I don't think whole life insurance is a very good financial vehicle. I don't think the first lien HELOC is a good idea, and here's why. And they go through a calm, rational discussion of it. Now, all of our critics will believe that they do that. That's the sad part. All of our critics really don't have very much self awareness. So they actually believe in their own minds, they actually believe that they are engaging in calm professional debate when in fact they're engaging in horribly disrespectful name calling and so on. And they do make some arguments mixed in with all that, but they can't do it in a way that's respectful. I don't understand why. If you're going to get upset and angry, at least get upset and angry over something that actually matters. Whatever the right financial strategy is, it's not a big deal, right? This isn't one of the great truths of the universe, right? There's no moral dimension to it, or at least there shouldn't be. It's just a discussion over what's the best financial strategy. But yeah, I do appreciate people commenting. And these guys commenting gave us a lot of material to use to educate the public. So DeAndre and I answered a lot of his objections, a lot of his questions. There were, I think, two guys in particular, and we went through it and responded. Thanks for commenting, Get My Mail. Let me know how your line of credit is going. Let me know how things are going on that. AR Big Dog 8957 says, great breakdown, new subscriber. Thanks. Thank you, AR. Appreciate it. He's commenting on my first lien HELOC video. Infinite Velocity USA posted another YouTube video. I'm not sure where that went to, but it's interesting. Infinite Velocity, I think that term was coined by Sebastian Boyer, the approved guy. What we're doing is we're combining infinite banking with velocity banking. And the phrase coined for that is infinite velocity. When you combine the two, it's a 1 + 1 = 3 situation, in my opinion. Both strategies stand on their own, and you can do one and not the other. But I think when you combine the two, you end up with an even better solution. Okay, X-File Mike says, I actually use a much better source for my auto and homeowners insurance than Costco. This is actually a PNC insurance agent that I personally have used. He's a good PNC agent, and I've also referred my customers to him as well. He's commenting on one of my client interviews, Thomas Cole, who is a current client of mine. And by the way, Thomas Cole is not doing the infinite banking concept, so I do have clients who just who decide not to do infinite banking, but just to take out like a convertible term life insurance policy, or maybe they need some help with their health insurance, or maybe they do a long-term care policy. So not all my clients do infinite banking. So thanks for your comment, Mike. Mike would definitely know. So, Costco, I point out to my clients and others that you can get your home and auto insurance through Costco. And not always, but most of the time, it can result in substantial cost savings. I personally have done that in the past. However, it's not for everyone. Some people would prefer to work with different companies, and some people would prefer to work with an actual PNC agent and develop a relationship with them. And for those of you who are in the state of Georgia and some in Florida, I actually have referred them to this guy here. So this guy is a PNC agent. So thanks for commenting. Would love to have a discussion on the ins and outs of property and casualty insurance, things that people may not know, where to get it, what to pay for it, who to work with, all those sorts of things. In fact, I have a client who just switched all of their PNC insurance over to a different company because they had a bad experience, got into a car accident, and had a bad experience with their current insurance company. And there were two issues. There was the insurance company not paying enough for the car, which was totaled, undervaluing the car, and then also the fact that the car was leased and not owned. This particular client is a realtor, so it made a lot of sense to lease the vehicle and use it as and write it off as a business expense because they're driving everywhere since they're a realtor. And because of that, they decided to stop leasing and to actually just buy a car, and they bought one, and to switch all of their PNC insurance over to a different company based on that company's claims experience, not based necessarily on them being the lowest price. I like to show people alternative options that they may not be aware of. So, Costco, I think most people don't even know you can get your home and auto insurance through Costco. And for better or worse, a lot of people view home and auto insurance as just a commodity and they're just looking for the lowest price. And if that's you, then Costco might be a good option. On the other hand, if you're looking for other options, if you're looking for the best claims experience, if you're looking for a good agent that you can develop a relationship with, or if you have specific needs that need to be met, then maybe other options are better. But I like presenting people with options that they may not be aware of. But thanks for commenting, Mike. Appreciate it. So here, I'm going to skip through these. So this guy, Thomas, we did a whole series of videos responding to him. So Thomas commented voluminously on our first lien HELOC slash velocity banking series, and we've already responded to him in this series of videos. So I'm not going to respond here because we've already done that. But thank you for commenting, Thomas. Appreciate it. Okay, the Marine and the Missus says, do y'all offer this in Texas? I'm calling around to my local credit unions, and they don't seem to be well versed on what a first lien HELOC is. They keep thinking I'm asking questions about a HELOC in the second position, and it's getting annoying trying to explain to them what I want. When I told the last bank I called that I wanted to get more info on the first lien HELOC they offer, it was mentioned on their website, she told me most people don't use a first lien HELOC to pay off their mortgage. And these are people in the mortgage department. Yeah, most people are not familiar with the first lien HELOC. I actually recommend going through my link to schedule time. Schedule time with me or go through the link that's in the description of all my YouTube videos where you can actually schedule time with a first lien HELOC specialist. If you just call up your local bank, you're going to be talking to people who have no clue about anything. Okay. I don't know why people do this, but they look up, they hear about the first lien HELOC, and then they call their own bank. Why are you doing that? Your own bank doesn't know anything about anything when it comes to first lien HELOCs. You want to talk to someone who specializes in first lien HELOCs, and you want to work with a lender who specializes in first lien HELOCs. Okay. So I wouldn't recommend doing that. I would recommend talking to the experts. Your local bank is not the expert. Many of them don't even have first lien HELOCs, or if they do, they certainly don't have the specialized product we're talking about with a checking account that's automatically linked to your first lien HELOC. So I don't know why people do that. I don't call your bank, okay? Work with the experts. Work with people who actually do first lien HELOCs for a living, not your bank who doesn't. They do other things. They make money other ways. It kind of reminds me of, I have to tell a little story here now. Story time. I contacted a guy. I was actually referred to a guy who has been in the mortgage business for over 30 years. And I sent him a note And I just asked, "Hey, are you familiar with the first lien HELOC slash velocity banking strategy?" And he blew up. Well, he didn't blow up, but he kind of responded like, "I've been in the business for 30 years. Of course I know what a HELOC is, blah, blah, blah. Like, I know all about this. I've been in the business for 30 years, right?" I was like, "Okay, great." So, of course, I did what I normally did, and I took him at face value. I said, "Okay, great. Maybe I can refer you some business if you can do first lien HELOCs. Let's talk about it." So we scheduled time. And of course, he, with his more than 30 years of experience, thinks he knows all about this. And so I'm like, okay. And I just start talking through about here are the requirements that I would need. Here's what the bank needs to offer in order for me to refer business to you. And he had to very quickly admit that he knew absolutely nothing about the first lien HELOC. He had never heard of it, had never heard of velocity banking, had no clue how any of this worked. This is someone with over 30 years of experience in the mortgage industry. Okay. And this is not at all uncommon. 99% of people in the mortgage business have no clue how a first lien HELOC works and how velocity banking works. No clue at all. And not only do they have no clue, it's hard to teach them because they think they already know everything. And so they're always trying to fit you into their paradigm. Like when I'm trying to explain infinite banking or velocity banking to someone for the first time, they keep digging for something concrete because they cannot think abstractly and they think I'm being evasive. They keep trying to jump to the straight to the concrete product and I pull them back and say, "No, hold on. First, we need to understand the strategy. Forget about the product. That doesn't matter. You got to understand the strategy first. Otherwise, you're just going to get lost in the concrete product, which by itself means nothing. A first lien HELOC by itself does nothing. A whole life insurance policy by itself does nothing. The question is, what is your strategy? What financial problem are you solving with that product?" And then once we understand the concept, the vehicle becomes more straightforward. But I've learned that for whatever reason, most people just cannot think abstractly. They cannot think conceptually, and they keep pushing you until they get to a concrete product so that they can then dismiss you. What they're trying to do is they have a pre existing paradigm and they're trying to fit you into their pre-existing paradigm where it doesn't fit. Infinite banking doesn't fit into your pre-existing paradigm. Velocity banking doesn't fit into your pre-existing paradigm. So you got to take a step back, think abstractly, understand the concept first, and then you'll understand that the vehicle, while it's important, it's secondary because you can do velocity banking with other vehicles than a first lien HELOC. You could, in theory, do infinite banking or something like it with other vehicles other than whole life insurance, right? So that's a long winded way of saying, yeah, don't contact your bank. Why are you doing that? I put the link in my description for a reason. Talk to a first lien HELOC specialist. Don't call your bank. They don't know anything about this. You're just wasting your time and theirs. So don't do that. Okay. She said, "I am a Texan. And after all, I did actually look into the all in one loan, but from the video I watched, the closing costs are similar to that of a mortgage and really made me reconsider. I don't want to pay those costs again as I just paid them 17 months ago and it was hard enough to stomach it then. So hopefully I can find a credit union near me who offers first lien HELOC with reasonable rates, but I'll keep you all in mind if not." Okay, well, you're not going to find it, just so we're clear. You can look, but the list of lenders who actually offer first lien HELOCs and who actually do them well is a very small list. And I'm pretty sure I know all the lenders on the list. And the best of them are the ones who specialize in first lien HELOCs where that's all they do. And all of them, at the very least, you're going to be working with a department that specializes in first lien HELOCs, and that's all they do. And if you're looking to avoid closing costs, well, you're not going to be able to. It's a refi, so you are going to have closing costs. And if you cannot stomach closing costs, then you're probably not, then maybe it doesn't make sense for you yet. If you cannot, we can run the numbers and see, are those closing costs justified, right? So are you going to save enough in interest? Is it going to get you enough additional financial efficiency to make those closing costs worth it? I would answer 100% yes, but it's going to take some time, obviously. But I don't, no bank is going to offer you a product like this without closing costs. They cannot do that. So there are going to be closing costs. But quite frankly, you're wasting your time. You're just looking around at your local credit unions or your local banks. You're wasting your time. They don't do first lien HELOCs. They don't know what they are. Okay. They're going to act like they do probably because they don't want to turn away business. Because again, when we say first lien HELOC, technically speaking, if you have a paid off house and you go and get a HELOC on it, then technically that's a first lien HELOC. But obviously, what we're talking about here is more than that. So I don't know why people do this, but you're just wasting your time and you're wasting the bank's time. I don't know why you would reach out to people who don't offer first lien HELOCs and keep shooting in the dark, hoping you're going to find someone who offers a first lien HELOC when you could instead go through my link and go straight to someone who specializes in it and can at least answer your questions. And I don't know why you think you're going to be able to get any mortgage product without closing costs. There are closing costs, period. You're not going to get away from that. So, you know, thank you for your comment. I appreciate it, but you're wasting your time. Okay, here we go. Here's an interesting comment. Charles Vaughn comments on my video on retirement accounts. So I'm commenting, Peter and I are commenting on an article that shows that more than half of retirement accounts are cashed out early. Okay. So many people put so much money into retirement accounts. I wonder how many of them know that in better than half of cases, the plan fails. People cash them out early because life happens. Life happens. Okay. So we're commenting on this, and Charles Vaughn responds saying, nobody questions why they have so much money in their 401k. They are thrilled with a large balance. I know I am. I am saving for retirement, by the way. It would be foolish to not take the company match. That's free money, 100% return. Infinite banking's flaw is very low rates of returns. IUL projections never materialize. Cash value returns on whole life policies have been very low for 20 years until recently. Hating a 401k is absurd. There is plenty of info on investing. Okay. Thanks for your comment, Charles. I appreciate it. There's a lot to respond to there. Okay. First of all, nobody questions. So let's take it one sentence at a time. And I probably won't be able to say everything I'd like to say. There just isn't enough time. But okay. Nobody questions why they have so much money in their 401k. Well, actually, they do. I get that all the time. People have large balances in their 401k. Okay, that's good. I'd rather have a large balance somewhere than not have a large balance. But when they come to me, they do question why they have so much money in there because it's all locked up in jail and it's all at risk, right? There's two big problems there. Number one, you cannot get access to the money. And then if and when you do, even if you're past the age where penalties would apply, now you got to pay taxes on it. So now you have to worry. So let's say you're in your 60s and you still earning a high income. If you start drawing down your 401k, you're going to pay probably the highest marginal tax rate on that money, right? That's a big deal. And so even though now you're past the age where penalties apply, you still got to worry about taxes. That's going to be taxed as income at your highest marginal rate. That's something to consider. So people do question it. I get that all the time. People have just been doing what they've been told to do, and they built up large balances in their 401k. And then when they come talk to me and get exposed to alternate strategies, they start looking askance at their 401k balance and saying, why do I have all this money locked up in jail? And why is it so difficult to get access to it? And where I have to pay penalties or at least taxes at a very high rate. And then again, why they have so much money in their 401k. Now, I know this is just a YouTube comment, so it's probably unrealistic to expect a high degree of precision, but technically you have no money in your 401k, right? You might have stocks, you might have bonds, you might have mutual funds, okay? You might have some degree of cash, and if you have cash in your 401k, I suppose I could grant for the sake of argument that would be money in a 401k. Although whether or not the US dollar is actually money is a separate question, but let's just grant it for here. But most people in their 401k, they don't have money. They have securities. They have mutual funds, typically, right? So they don't actually have any money, right? Because if you have money, at least you know what it's worth. If you have securities, you don't really know what they're worth. Their value can go up and down all the time, not to mention taxes and other things. And the thing about money is that it's liquid. Point that Ryan Griggs makes, right? Even if you do have cash in your 401k, the problem is it's not liquid. You can't access it. As Benton Penn would say, what is the cash surrender value of your IRA, of your 401k? When you look at your whole life insurance policy, that cash surrender value is actually yours. It's totally liquid and accessible to you. You could surrender it and just get it directly, or you can get access to it via a policy loan. The funds you have in your 401k are not liquid. The cash surrender value of your 401k, mean what could you actually get if you decide just quit and go home? Just give me my money and I'm going home. You get, I don't know, maybe 60%. So if you have $1 million in a 401k and you just say, I want all of it right now. After taxes and penalties, you're probably going to get maybe $600,000 of that million, maybe. So that $1 million number is really a form of false advertising. You don't have $1 million. Now they're charging you fees on the full $1 million, that's for sure. You're paying fees on the full $1 million account balance, even though probably a good 40% of it is not yours. No, you don't have any money in your 401k because it's not liquid. And lots of people do question why they have so much in their 401k when they come and talk to me, for sure. Okay. They are thrilled with a large balance. Well, I actually agree with you in a certain sense, and that's how Wall Street manipulates us. Because as long as you leave your money in your 401k, they can advertise that you have $1 million. But as soon as you want to try and get access to it, all of a sudden, you find out you don't really have $1 million. So that's how they manipulate us into keeping our money locked in their jail. So then they can advertise falsely that you have $1 million when really you don't. So I don't disagree with that point. That's one of the emotional ways in which Wall Street manipulates us. And he says, I know I am saving for retirement, by the way. So I think he was responding here to that, the fact that, look, a retirement account is not a savings vehicle, period. It's not. It's an investment vehicle. The root word of savings is safe. Your savings has to be somewhere safe where it's not saving. So if you have your money at risk in the market, then by definition, that is not savings. That's speculative investing. So if you're claiming that you're saving for retirement by putting money in a 401k, that is false. Maybe if you're keeping it all in cash, maybe if it's all in a money market account or something relatively safe, okay, maybe there. And I hope you are saving for retirement, but if you're doing it in a 401k and that money's going into securities, then by definition that's not saving. That's investing, that's speculating, it's not saving. And then he says it would be foolish to not take the company match. Well, I don't disagree with that point. If you have a company match, I definitely think it's worth considering contributing to your retirement account. It's not as straightforward as that. You'd have to actually run some analysis to see if it makes sense. He says that's free money, 100% return. Well, actually, no. It's not, as Ryan Griggs says, it's not free money because money is liquid. If it were free money, you could spend it tomorrow. But it's not free money because you cannot spend it tomorrow. It's locked up in jail. Okay. Now, again, I do think if you're getting a company match, that's a good thing. And back when I got a very generous company match, I contributed to my 401k up to what the company would match and no more. So if someone wants to contribute to a retirement account because their company is matching, I have no problem with that. I would say you probably want to do some analysis on that, honestly, not just reflexively take it, because you have to look at the opportunity cost of not having access to that money. And you also have to look at things like risk and taxation, things that people oftentimes don't take into consideration. It would be foolish to not take the company match. I don't necessarily completely agree with that, but I'll certainly concede that that if you have a company match, it's worth considering contributing to a retirement account. Absolutely, but you still need to do the cost benefit analysis. That's free money. No, it's not because it's not liquid. It's a match. It's a matching contribution, but it's not free money because it's not liquid. If it were free money, you could just go and spend that money tomorrow, but you cannot. It's not money in your pocket. It is an asset that is locked up in a Wall Street jail, and you cannot really touch it without taxes and penalties. So he says 100% return. Well, what are you going to have after taxes? What's it going to be decades from now when you withdraw it? You don't know. You don't know how much it's going to be taxed, and you don't know where the market is going or where the specific assets you're buying are going. Okay. Infinite banking's flaw is very low rates of returns. Okay. Bad grammar. But here we go again. Very low rates of return. Okay. First of all, who's talking about rate of return? Infinite banking is the process of becoming your own banker. Where does rate of return enter into this? This is again taking the infinite banking concept and trying to fit it into your pre-existing paradigm, and that doesn't work, right? That doesn't work. What rate of return are you getting in your checking account? Charles, I would ask you, the last time you made a major purchase, a major consumer purchase, what rate of return did you get? When you went and bought your last car, what was your rate of return on that purchase? How much of that money you spent on the car did you get back? I just did a video with Tyler Willie showing how his mother used his whole life insurance policy, a policy loan against his whole life insurance policy, or her whole life insurance policy, to buy a Tesla, and how she's getting all of that money back through her policy. Where does rate of return enter into that? You got to understand what that means. Now, it's deceiving because you can measure a rate of return inside of a whole life insurance policy. You can measure the internal rate of return on the cash value of a life insurance policy. Chris Kirkpatrick and I went through a scenario of an actual life insurance policy, looking at it historically, and the 36-year IRR on that actual policy from Mass Mutual was 6.13%. So that's the 6.13% rate of return, tax-free, with no market risk. So that's probably the equivalent of an 8% return if it were taxed. And we didn't take any on any risk to get there. And that's over 36 years. So if those policies are still in force and it's been more than 36 years, that rate of return is going to get better every single year because that's the way that whole life insurance works. So I think that's a pretty good rate of return, actually, when you consider there's no risk. It's guaranteed to go up in value every year and you're not paying any taxes on it. Not to mention the death benefit protection, the long-term care protection, the creditor protection. I think that's pretty good. If you ask the average person if they would like to put their money into an asset where you can get an 8% taxable return over the long run, 36 years, but you will not be taking on any risk. You'll have no down years. I think a lot of people would take that deal. Okay, then it says IUL projections never materialize. Well, I've never really discussed IULs on my channel, but I'm not going to disagree on that one. The reason IUL projections don't materialize is there's a number of different reasons. So I'm not going to disagree with that. In IUL, see, there's an actuary who made a point. A life insurance illustration is not a projection. So right here, Charles is showing he doesn't know how to read a life insurance illustration. It's an illustration, not a projection. There is a difference, right? The purpose of a life insurance illustration is to show you how it works. It is not to project out future performance. There is a difference. There is a difference. But I'm not going to disagree with that. It's interesting because I guess he hasn't really watched my channel very much because I've never really spoken about IULs. So again, this is what people do. They see like some really bad marketing on TikTok or somewhere else like that, and then they project that onto everyone else. So they see this awful 5-minute TikTok video that's full of marketing and half truths and things like that about IULs and infinite banking and whatever. And then whenever anybody else mentions infinite banking, they assume they're all just like that 5-minute TikTok video that you saw or that 30-second TikTok video that you saw. Okay. It would be like if I saw one really scammy realtor proposing some total scam on YouTube. And then every other realtor I meet, I assume they're doing the same thing. And every other real estate investment that I see, I'm like, oh, this is a scam. I know all about this. So I think that's what he's doing here. When have I ever spoken about IULs? You're just projecting onto me. I'm not against IULs, just so we're clear. I personally prefer whole life insurance for a lot of reasons. I've never really gotten in deep into that discussion because I think it's a bit of a distraction and there's a lot of details there. But again, he's projecting onto me things that I never said. I agree with you. IUL projections will probably not materialize. How is that relevant to what I'm talking about here? I don't see the relevance. Okay, and then he says cash value returns on whole life policies have been very low for 20 years until recently. Now that's interesting because if anything, it's actually the opposite. So that is the opposite of the case. Cash value returns on whole life policies have been very low for 20 years until recently. First of all, again, he keeps saying very low. Well, that's a relative term. Relative to what? What are you talking about? Give me a number and tell me why it's low. You say low. Okay, what's the number? Savings accounts were paying you 0% for multiple years. Meanwhile, over the long run, you're earning 4% tax-free in your whole life insurance policy. That's pretty good by comparison. Cash value returns on whole life policies, actually, it's the opposite. So interest rates have been coming down for the past 20 years. So actually, the returns in whole life were better previously. But again, why are we focused on returns? This is not an investment vehicle. And as always, the question is, as compared to what? I think the returns on whole life are incredibly high relative to a savings account, which is a much more fair comparison. A much more fair comparison. Look at the tax equivalent yield in a savings account. Whole life insurance is going to win pretty much every time over the long run. 4% tax free over the long run is really good. And it's actually more like 4.5 to 5% tax free. That's pretty good. And I'm not even including all the other benefits. Okay. And then he says, hating a 401k is absurd. Well, who's hating a 401k? Again, this is projection. I don't hate 401ks. All I'm doing is I'm pointing out the limitations. I'm pointing out that half of retirement accounts are cashed out early. I think that's important for the public to know and understand why that happens, to understand how 401ks work. Really, all I'm doing is clarifying how a 401k actually works and asking if that aligns with your philosophical framework. Most people have never really thought through the logic behind a 401k. They just contribute to it. Oftentimes, they contribute by default, which is absurd to me that Wall Street can take your money by default and you have to actually actively opt out or they get your money by default. Okay, so I don't hate 401ks. There are use cases for them. I just think most people don't really put any thought into it. And then he says there's plenty of info on investing. Okay. What we said in the video is that what Peter said is there's no guidance. Yeah, there's plenty of information on investing. That's the problem. That's the problem. If you go and search for information on investing, you'll be awash in all kinds of information, but you'll get zero guidance, which is what you need. You don't need information. When you get a microwave oven, you don't need to sit there and read the 30-page instruction manual, and you need to understand how to actually use it. So, as Peter Nelson was saying, there's no guidance out there. No one's giving you guidance on how to invest. So the average person is putting their money into this Wall Street casino where they have not the slightest clue how any of it works. Not one clue how mutual funds work, how the markets work, how fees work, taxes, all that sort of a thing. They're not professional investors. And yet they're putting money into vehicles that really are for professional investors. Again, you're not listening. We never said, Peter didn't say, oh, there's not enough information out there on investing. No, he said there's no guidance, which is accurate. There is plenty of information. That's the problem. That's the problem. It's information overload. That's the problem. So thanks for commenting, Charles. I did respond, but I didn't hear back from him. But I'm always open to alternate perspectives. I'll just ask that you try and maybe listen to what's being said and hear the nuance of what's being said and try to respond to what I'm actually saying. And if you have a different viewpoint, I'd be happy to hear it. But thanks for commenting, everyone. We'll keep the engagement going.